Welcome to Romera Records podcast. Today we have on Cameron Allen. How's it going, man?
It's going good. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Yeah. So Nadia brought me to you. I think that's pretty cool when I get to have on a guest and they bring me another guest. So a little bit of familiarity with that. So yeah, you do some pretty interesting stuff, and of course we want to get into that. But I guess just tell me how you, just got into what you currently do.
Yeah, so wow. Okay. Yeah, so there's a few different versions of this that I tend to tell, but the one that I'll talk about right now is just based off of like after college, I came back home here in Memphis and I was working at this place called Youth Villages, working with like youth who've like been through like a lot of stuff. And essentially I was working with a lady named Norma. She owns the Circle over in Bartlett, and we did a ceremony. It was a cacao ceremony, and in that cacao ceremony, I asked for my spiritual path to be opened and for the blockages that of like the material world to move out of my way, essentially. And so when I asked for that, I didn't know a few days later I was going to get fired from my job. And so I got fired from Youth Villages because I had like a DWI that I didn't like tell them about. I didn't know, like I had to go tell dad, that's how I felt about it. I was like, I didn't know to go tell my dad that I got in trouble, like that's kind of how I felt about it. But I was actually so thankful that happened because from that point on, I started working at this spiritual supply store here in Memphis called Ebo. And yeah, I mean, so obviously I had applied for that already before it, but that's how I started getting into everything that I'm doing now, as far as herbalism and as far as astrology specifically. Because when I started working at Ebo, after a while, I started asking people, like, what do you know about astrology? And I just asked so many people. And there were so many people that came into Ebo that have so much information about so many different things, about magic, about hoodoo, about all the things. And nobody seemed to give me any good answers on astrology or what is astrology. And even coming into it, like the way I was accessing astrology was through the plants. And so each plant would essentially have an association with a planet. And so I would see that in books and I would just be like, okay, like this plant is saying this plant is like represented by the planet Mars. And I'm like, well, why or how? And I'm like, I need to know more. Like I didn't want to just stop at this is this, and that's something that I feel like happens a lot these days, especially like in, I guess, what we can call the spiritual world. Like people are like, well, this is this. And people are like, okay. And then it's like, and they they accept it, and then they act like they or they feel like they know it, or they like go and like regurgitate that, But I'm always like, well, why? And so yeah, I went to go seek the why, and so I started reading a bunch of different astrology books at the store, and I would read them, and I'd be like, this isn't it. And I would read another one, I'm like, this isn't it. Oh. And then like everybody would be like, Cameron, well, how do you know it's not it? And I would be like, I don't know, I just know. And so then I started coming across certain people. The main person I was learning under in the beginning his name is Sage Popham at the School of Evolutionary Herbalism. So it was just like connecting the plants to the planets directly. And then after that, I got into what's called Evolutionary Astrology. And that one is like the one that I kind of tend to work with the most at this current point in time, where it's just essentially helping someone learn the arc of their soul, or like their soul path, we could call it that. But really for me, it's just about like understanding how someone's identity was formed coming into this life and where they're trying to move forward. And so that's kind of how I got into what I'm doing now.
Okay, so let's go back to when you had that first experience when you're the cacao ceremony.
Yeah.
So, like, first of all, how old were you when you were doing that?
How old was I? I had to be like 25. 25 then, yeah. So now I'm 32. So yeah, maybe I was 26. Maybe I was around like 26, 25-ish when that happened. Yeah.
So, like, one thing that I'm huge on is making people realize, like, how young they are. And a lot of people, like, they think of late 20s, early 30s as, like, I'm getting kind of old. But it's like, you're still basically a child. Like,
exactly.
People who are 60, you're only half their life.
Right,
you know what I mean? So you have a whole nother life to live. But so, you're still malleable. Your brain is still malleable at that time period. Did you feel like that? Like, did you feel that, you could go through a whole new change with this experience, or were you like trying to teach a old dog new tricks at that kind of point?
Oh no, I'm gun ho. I don't even like back then. I didn't even like project forward like that. I just was like essentially like a child, like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, what's this? Not in the way of like being childish, but like childlike as far as like, I wonder what this is. I wonder
Yeah.
what that is. What's behind that? Like even the question why, I've always asked that question because I'm never like, okay, cool, like this information, I got it. I think I get it now. It's just like, why? Or like even I've come to like tell people, I always say like, well, what's behind that? Right? So it's like if I have this information, I'm like, well, what's behind that? What's behind that is an experience, And so I've always done that, but I didn't always form it that way, or I didn't know I was consciously aware in doing it. I would just be doing it, which essentially has brought me a lot of wisdom, but not wisdom as in I'm the most wise person on the planet, but like I fucked up a lot. And so like now I can tell you what you might not want to do that. And you might not want to do that and might not want to do this, and this is how you might want to do that because I've watched people do it and I've done it myself and I've seen how like the pitfalls of it all. So
Yeah. So I actually did a podcast last night with a guy who was I think he was just an exotic dancer at like he was Canadian. So he did exotic dancing in a club in Canada for like 25 years. Started when he was 17.
Wow.
And gosh, what happened? Oh, so one of the questions I asked him, I was like, did you feel like, this was like some different experience than what most people experience? Whatnot? He was like, honestly, I didn't even think about it. I was just kind of doing it. And it didn't even, cross my mind to think about how I'm doing something different than most people would be doing. He was like, really, what is normal? You know what I mean? And I was like, dang.
Yeah. Well, that's profound at 17 to do
Yeah.
that.
Truly, because I think he said you're supposed to be, I think he said the drinking age was 19. And he was like a topless waiter. That's what he was doing.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, that's a little different, man.
Yeah.
Not legal. So, but, and then another thing that I thought about later was, I don't so much think that he's like the smartest person in the world, but he probably gained so much wisdom in that like career field, being so young and then doing that for so long. Yeah. So I definitely know what you mean by like, gaining the wisdom, not by so much just, I'm so smart and I know all this stuff, but like you experience things and now you know what not to do and you could guide somebody else.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, I don't know, maybe they don't understand the concept of just experience things. And so my wife is like one of those people. So she is a type of person that if she wants to do something, she needs to know everything about it. She needs to be the expert, have a PhD in it, and then she can start.
Yeah, exactly.
She's not let's just jump in and find out. But that's me. Like let's just do it. And if it works, it works. If it don't, it don't. But now I know.
Exactly.
And I don't waste time trying to learn everything. So that's just how I am. Do you feel like you've become that type of person, or was that just a one-off type thing?
Yeah, I was always that way.
Okay.
Like growing up, just always asking questions, always trying stuff out. Even like sometimes trying stuff out because somebody said don't do it. Like it's just like, what happens if I do it this way? What happens if I do it? I'm just curious, Like I'm always like, what's going on here? So yeah, I've always been that way for sure. And a lot of times too, it like made me like naive to myself because I wouldn't even acknowledge how different I was sometimes. Yeah, but like also like how much wisdom I did have, and I would be like not valuing it, because I wasn't thinking about it. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I am doing this thing that's so different than everybody else. Even though I knew that, but I just wouldn't acknowledge it all the time because I was just moment, just like living in the present and like moving forward and knowing that I could figure stuff out too, because my mom always, she always taught me like how to think, not what to think. So I'm always like trying to process like, okay, if I want to do this, then how am I going to do it rather than, just being caught up in who I think I am. Yeah, I guess I could say that, yeah.
I do think that it's important for people to understand that, what you just said, like the how to think and not what to think, because when you get into the like what to think, it's like you're trying to. I would say that's how you shape somebody's mind and like
Exactly.
and what they're able to think. Like I would say like kids in high school,
Mm-hmm.
like you're not really teaching them how to think. You're really teaching them what to think because you teach them their subjects, and then you're like, all right, this is how you do math. And like I remember when I was in high school, I think I was in like ninth grade, and we were doing something in class, and the teacher's teaching us what to do, and for some reason, every time the teacher would teach us something new, I would always figure out a different way to do it. And it might be longer, it might be shorter, but I would just always find out a different way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would be like, I don't even know how you did that, but it's still right.
Yeah.
So I've always been a big like just figure out a way, that type of person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we really like teach younger kids on that, just like give them a little bit, teach them like concepts of like, all right, this is how the government works. And then like, all right, now how do y'all think it should work and stuff
Exactly.
like that? Not like, nope, this is how it is. Don't change it. Leave it how it is. Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like government and things that have been around for so long, they usually benefit off of people sticking with how a system is.
Yep.
And like the stuff that you're doing with astrology and everything, I think that it's such I guess like an open mindset type of thing that you don't even have the ability to tell somebody this is how it is and just do this. Do you feel the same way? Or?
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, because I mean, it's like honestly, how does astrology even work?
Yeah.
Like that's
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah,
That's a great question.
Yeah, like that's one thing I'm always like curious about, and they have these like models and theories about it, and I just come to the point where I'm like, like when I see a new model that somebody's like trying to share, I'll listen, but at the end of the day, I'm like, until I get like some type of divine like reflection or something that like hits me and I can like feel it as the truth in my body, like I'm just like, it works. Like I don't need to necessarily know how it works. I'm curious to know how it works, but I'm not really like, that's not my prerogative to like go out and like understand it from like a scientific perspective and like
Yeah.
I'm not even worried about that. But I also do know like light influences everything. And I know like if Jupiter wasn't where Jupiter is at, the Earth would have been hit by so many asteroids that
Yeah.
we wouldn't even exist. And so
Which is
like,
crazy.
Exactly, right. And like Jupiter is supposed to be like a planet that's like beneficial or like caring or loving or giving, and it's like that just makes sense, right? It's benefic. It's beneficial because like it's literally protecting us. And they say they also call it like the road opener. And so it's like making sure the roads are open for us to not get hit by asteroids. So like simple things like that make sense to me in my mind, and my mind isn't always such a like linear mind, even though I can go into that realm as well. But yeah, so that's how I kind of orient myself towards it. I guess so in a general though, the light, how light influences things is like really important. And I've even done like little experiments on like buying blue light, buying red light, buying green light, and like seeing how that feels.
Oh, wow.
And then that kind of translates over into like working with crystals as well and stuff like that. And so, yeah.
What do you think about those? Was it like the salt rock lamps? Like, do you think that those like change your mood or anything like that?
There's conflicting information about it. I've never bought one. I've never felt turned on by it in that way. But yeah, so I don't know. Like, there's people who think great things about it, because they have like whole like yoga studios that have like salt caves in them. But then some people are saying it's like actually like very harmful.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, so
That's crazy.
yeah, I don't know if that's one of those. Yeah, I don't know on that one. Yeah, I couldn't say.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard tons of different things about using different light, and as we see it in all of our smart devices on your your phone or your computer, laptop, whatever, they give you the option to turn off the blue light because it's there for a reason. People like it's telling you, hey, too much blue light might be a bad thing, so you might want to turn it off.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's something so simple that even the creators of the thing are letting you know, but some people don't even realize it.
Exactly, yeah. And blue light would be represented by Saturn, the planet Saturn, which is like
okay.
the most malefic planet. And you're not supposed to like expose yourself to high doses of that type of energy because it represents like extreme cold.
Okay.
And it'll like end up like giving you like a depressed tissue state. And so like that's what you're doing when you're like blasting yourself with blue light. It's like making your eyes work so hard that it's gonna actually end up being like very dull as you get older. And so that's why, yeah, the nighttime mode that they have on it. There's an app called Iris that I use. And so whenever it goes from like day to night, I always turn on my Iris app so that I can like, yeah, regulate my hormones, you know, even like thinking about that, like people don't even understand like, okay, like it's nighttime and I have this light on and I have this blue light in my face. And so now I'm still secreting serotonin instead of melatonin. And like, what does that do to your sleep tonight? What does that do to your sleep over 10 years? You know, and like, how does that actually affect you? And like, yeah, it's just little things like that that I think about. I mean, that's obviously beyond astrology, but actually not beyond astrology in a sense too. Yeah.
So could you give like a short breakdown of how, I guess, astrology, I guess we've been talking about this whole time, but how astrology affects you in like everyday life? And for everybody listening, even if you don't, I guess, quote unquote, believe in astrology, it's still real. You know what I mean? Like the planets are still there and the stars and everything.
Exactly.
So it's, to me, astrology is a way of, it's an explanation to some people on how the world, or not the world, but the universe works. And I think some people think of it as like a science that's either not real or it is. But to me, it's not that at all. There's no like, this is true or false, and it's saying like whatever you believe is wrong and this is right. I think it's more of like, this is how I interpret the universe. This is how the universe speaks to me. So, I mean, I don't know. You're way more qualified than
No, I like that, you know, and I always say it's like the science and the art, you know, the science and the art of understanding how the planetary forces influence terrestrial events. And so that could be a terrestrial event that's happening to me internally from my psychological perspective, but it also could be like, when we had that, like recently we just had the ice storm, you know, and it was like, all these planets were in a specific place. When I'm talking about Saturn again, like Saturn's like extreme cold, and it was like the new moon that month was in Aquarius, which was represented by Saturn, like it was ruled by Saturn, and it was conjunct Saturn. So it's like it's gonna be cold as shit, like, and people can track the weather that way too, you know. So it's just like observation correlation, you know, it can be just like seen very easily and like in that way. And that would be more to me like a scientific outlook on it. And the art of it is to know like when a person was born, and you look at a chart that has a circle and it has a bunch of symbols, and you're like, yeah, when you were 5 years old, there was something that happened in your family, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh my gosh, how'd you know? You know, it's like, that's the art of it to me, you know? And like, always holding those two in like dynamic tension, because theory always needs practice and science always needs art. Those things belong together, even though people seem to separate them all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if that answered the question, but
Yeah. I think that, you know, with anything that is art, you can break it down through science of like how things work. So if you're a painter, you know that if you mix red and you get blue, you're going to get purple. That's art, but that's also science. Like if you take these two colors, their pigments put together are going to make this other color. There's no magic in that. It's just facts. Yeah. But that's the beauty of science and art put together. Like we use these things. And like with music, like people are just think that music is just, you know, some art that comes out of somebody's head, but they're also using science, because you have to figure out, you know, the sound waves right now in this room. Like I will eventually acoustically make this room sound better, but like our voices are bouncing off the walls right now, and that's how you're hearing our voices, and it's coming out of my mouth, and my voice is at a certain amount of hertz and all these things. Like nobody's thinking about this while they're listening to me, but that's the science and the art of it. You know, if I was singing, you'd hear the art that's coming out of my brain into the microphone, but it's also, as I said, science. So I don't know. I think those things
yeah.
are way correlated than what people give them credit for.
Exactly, yeah. And also, like, I don't know that mixing like those colors together isn't magic. I don't know that this isn't magic, like
Yeah.
because I mean if I took this back 300 years,
it'd be magic.
Like they're like he's a wizard.
Yeah.
Like so it's like even at that, like thinking of things from the perspective of like these things aren't separate, like magic and science and blah, all these things are actually all woven in together. It just depends on your perspective on things. Because if you're a materialist, then of course you're not going, that's not magic. That's just the frequency. And like, it's like, obviously that's my like nerd science voice that I'm using. It's like, I always use that voice. It's so funny. Yeah, and then there's people who are like, the universe and everything's vibration. And it's like, yeah, everything's vibration. And yeah, that is the blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And, fusing those together so you can have a more holistic understanding on things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just always invite people to like start being able to tune into both of those things, because on one side, the like everything's vibration, it gives it more clout in 2022 to be able to say, well, yeah, everything's vibrations, because if I sit you down and play rock music in your ear for 2 hours, you're going to probably get anxiety. But if I play you Mozart, you might be chill as shit.
Yeah.
So it's like, that can be magic because I could be playing that in the background and nobody's really paying attention to it. And now everybody comes into my house and they're chill.
Yeah.
That's magic.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's those like that subconscious mind type influence that we have that we don't even realize. Mm-hmm. Same thing as you were talking about, like with the weather, like it could be cold outside and you could be pissed off and you don't even know why you're mad, but it's because it's cold.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Those simple things. And that's why I don't think a lot of people realize this, but like certain movies come out at a certain time of the year, and it's usually like around fall and winter, is because most people aren't going out and doing things. They're staying at home, or they'll go out to like the movie theater and sit and do nothing because those great movies come out in that time of year because they know people are just like more sedentary. They're not going around and being active. Mm-hmm. So it's like, hey, let's catch people while they're doing nothing and sitting still. And then also same thing with music. Like you're going to get more, I'm not going to say sad music, but like more homey type music in those types of years, and you're going to get like the fun party music usually in like the warmer months.
Absolutely.
It's because people know that like I need to put out this music when people are going to be listening to it, when people are going to be at the beach, when people are going to be having parties and stuff like that. And those are the simple things. Like you said, like if somebody comes into your house, you're playing like the Mozart, they're going to be chill. It's because they're just hearing that music and their brain is firing these signals of, oh, we're in a calm state. Like everything's okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And the thing to me is like when it comes to magic and science, like the more you understand it, the more you can just get with it. Or you don't have to be essentially like, it just doesn't have to influence you as much, and just through awareness, Like simple awarenesses that I always tell people about, especially, this is like one of my biggest ones. It's like in the wintertime, oftentimes people talk to me and they're like, I have SAD, seasonal affective disorder. And I'm like, you mean that you're sleepy in the wintertime and you want to fucking hibernate? Like, what do you mean? Like, no disrespect to anybody who has SAD, if you want to call it that as well, whatever, that's your thing. But it's, we hibernate, like literally the leaves fall off the trees, literally the squirrels going, where the squirrels at? Everything is like going and resting.
Yeah.
And I even tell people, I'm like, you think that you're depressed, but you just need deep rest. It's just like you're going down and into yourself.
Yeah.
And being very internal. So of course you don't want to like be a capitalistic god and like run out and do everything all the time. You might still do it, but also it's like we have to be mindful that we're doing that because then we don't have to do it as much. We don't have to have as much like judgment, shame, blame, guilt for not hustling when it's the wintertime and you need to actually go sit the fuck down. It's just like, just being mindful of those things, or even things like people and their diets, it's like even people who are like raw foodists and stuff like that, but it's the wintertime in Memphis and then they're like, I'm eating all the right things, but they're like bloated all the time. And it's because they're eating all this like cold food during a cold season. And sometimes these people even have like cold bodies, which is like a whole different thing to like get into. But yeah, so just like even being able to match up energetics, like you're saying, like party music is stimulating and the sun is stimulating. And so just simple things, being able to identify stuff like that in your reality can be so helpful and make things easier.
Yeah, I've always like realized a lot of people don't understand like what they're eating, and because like somebody could eat something and be like, oh man, like I just feel bloated today, and then they'll eat it the next day and be like, oh man, I feel. It's like, hey, it's probably the thing you've been eating all the time, and you're just not realizing it. And like that was the big craze with celiac with gluten. Like I think a lot of people were getting it and not realizing it. And then also, I don't know how many people know this, but like you can make yourself sick by thinking yourself sick.
Oh, absolutely.
And when like we as people, we end up, it probably happened with COVID too. I mean, you probably couldn't think yourself into COVID, but you could think yourself sick again. So like if you had like family friends who were sick with COVID and you had been around them, you might be completely fine. But you're like, if you have anxiety all the time, you could be like, oh, I have been feeling kind of different. And then you might think yourself into being sick. And then you might even not even get tested and be like, nope, I had COVID. I had all the symptoms, all that kind of stuff. So that mind-body connection of just realizing like what state am I in, like that I'm in right now to be able to do what I need to do. And like you were talking about, like if it's winter and it's cold, like you're not going to feel like going out there and doing all the hustle and bustle that you usually do in the warmer months. It's just natural. But when it gets warmer, you're going to feel completely different. And you're going to be like, why was I ever, staying at home all the time? Exactly. It's because it's just a different time of year.
Exactly. Yeah. And more about the mind-body connection. I always think of like the two brains. I mean, and there's more than two brains for sure, but like the head brain and the stomach brain, and like how those interface. And in astrology, like it represents like the zodiac sign Virgo is like representing the digestive tract, but like the mental functioning of the digestive tract. So it's like organizing everything. So when in your head brain you're thinking like, I feel like I'm sick, your stomach brain is like, all right, cool. Let's like organize this in a way that like makes us feel like something's wrong with us. Something's wrong with us. And then also too, I've noticed people like, because we have so many viruses in us at any point in time. It's like, but when we have these thoughts, I feel like it does amplify them or it gives them more like energy to feed off of so that they can express themselves. And so that's how I've kind of think about it in my mind with things like that. And also if you're stressed, that makes you stressed out. If you're stressed out, your immune system goes down and your nervous system isn't working properly. So that's always going to be a thing.
Do you feel like you have to teach these things to the majority of people? Like, do you think that this is not common knowledge?
No, it's not common knowledge. I know it's not. Yeah. I always used to even have tricks to like get people to like realize things, kind of like awaken them through like a intellectual smack on the face, but like a delicate like wake up kind of smack, because like I would talk to people and they would be like, I don't like drinking water, they'll say stuff like that, and I would be like, what do you like yourself? And they'll be like, yeah, why do you like? They're like look at me like I'm weird and like why do you ask that? And I'm like, because you're at least at minimum, let's say you're 50% water, which we know it's even more than that.
Yeah,
it's like, so just like be mindful. We got to be mindful of things like that because we're not taught those things.
Yeah.
So yeah, the most simple things are the things that I find myself telling people over and over again. And a lot of times too, those are the biggest things that like help people shift things because it takes them out of shoulds, supposed tos, getting lost in the world of thought and just being like, oh yeah, I need to breathe before I eat my food. Oh yeah, when I'm eating and I'm on the go, I'm in sympathetic nervous system activation. And so I'm not in rest digest.
Yeah.
So of course I'm not processing my food correctly. And then I'm overthinking. So I'm digesting information up here and I'm not digesting information down here. Simple things like that can help people just like so much.
Yeah.
You tell somebody that one time and they can remember that the rest of their life. And I mean, yeah, it's super important for like very simple things like that to be, remembered, because people want complicated diets.
Yeah.
And they want to be like, how can I lose weight? And I'm like, well, are you even eating with the sun? And, are you eating at night right before you go to sleep, which allows you not to have good rest? And, just very, very simple things, I always tell people go straight back to the basics. If you do that and you work your way back up, by the time you get to some complicated high caloric diet or whatever, how many calories you're supposed to have, or is it going to be keto or vegan or vegetarian or blah, blah, quack, quack. It's like, no, it's just the simple things, you know? And you can adjust that as you go, but back to the basics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a name for this diet. I don't know what it is, but it's just like only eating things that come from the earth. So it could be like animals or plants, and then that's about it. Because you have to make bread. You have to put the ingredients together to make bread, or you have to or chips, whatever. Like those things you have to like physically like create. But if you just eat broccoli, you know what I mean? It's just straight from the ground. Or an animal, it's
Would that be considered like a whole food diet? Is that what that is?
It might be. It might be whole food.
Okay.
Yeah. So like a whole food diet just makes the most sense, because that's like what original humans, that's what they ate, because it took years for them to experiment, to be like, I think about that all the time. Like, who was the first person to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Like, first you had to have the person who invented bread, and then the person who invented peanut butter, and then the person who invented jelly, and then you had to put all that together, right?
Yeah.
So like, to me, it just makes sense to eat a whole food diet if you want to just be healthy, because it's things that we didn't invent to satisfy our taste buds. It was just things that were just already here to be able to survive. I was actually going to ask you, like, what are some things that before we had the podcast, we were talking about like the kidney beans are like your kidneys, and then the broccoli's like lungs. Please elaborate on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So this is called the Doctrine of Signatures. And so my teacher always says, he's like, it's a sign of nature, signature, And so, like you were saying, like the kidney beans are shaped like the kidneys, and it's just like a sign from nature saying like, hey, like this is good for that. And so just like you look at trees and they look like the lungs. And so the trees are the lungs of the planet. And there's other things too. There's a plant called Solomon seal, and it looks just like your joints. Like where your joints come together. Yeah. Like the roots of it look just like it. And that's what it's good for. And so just being able to identify things like that in nature, oh man, it goes so far.
Yeah.
Because there's also this plant called Calamus root. They call it in Ayurveda they call it vacha. It's like the power to speak. And it literally looks like your larynx. Oh, right? And it's like, and you drink it and it's like you can just feel it. Like, and even I've given it to people for them, like, so sometimes with herbalism, I do it from a perspective of strictly physiological, strictly emotional, or strictly psychological, or like most times I do a fusion of all of them.
Okay.
Right? But if somebody like is like shy and they're kind of talking like this or something like that, and I'm like, well, maybe this person needs some vacha, they need some calamus root because they're not having the power to speak.
Yeah.
But really they came to me and they're like, well, my nervous system is off. And so let's say just a generic thing. Let's say lavender, chamomile, and then at the end of it, I'll just sprinkle some calamus in there for the energetic effects of like helping them with their voice, and speaking their truth and stuff like that. That was a tangent. But yeah, so that's what I would say about the Doctrine of Signatures overall. It's just like this thing looking like that and how it has an influence on it. It's just, you can see it in a lot of different things in the reality. Yeah, consistently. Even if you think about the nervous system and lightning, or if you think about the eye in the cosmos and how these things like correspond to each other, it's everywhere all the time because we are nature and we forget that sometimes. So, yeah.
And again, that goes back to the science and the art, right? Like it could be science to prove that certain things are great for you, but at the same time, the art of seeing a tree like the lungs of the earth. Like some people might be like, well, no, that's just, whatever. But it's like, all right, man, it's, the proof is in the pudding, but
Exactly.
that's just my way I interpret the universe, and you can, again, astrology is one of those things, believe it or not, that's up to you, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
And it might not make sense to you, but it's a thing, right?
Yeah. Sometimes too, when people ask me, especially if they're being assholes about it, and I can like feel that, people are like, do you believe in astrology? And I'm like, well, do you believe in language? Like, it's like, do you believe in weather?
Yeah.
It's like, what are we believing here? Like, no one would ever ask you, do you believe in weather? Weather is occurring. It's happening, It's something that you can watch and observe, and you can learn about weather.
Yeah.
And you can know why it's happening, but that's not something you really have to believe in.
Yeah.
And so that's how I kind of like look at astrology too. It's like, it's been happening, and it's going to just keep happening, whether, I believe it or not, like you were saying before.
Yeah. It's like gravity, if you can believe in gravity or not, but it's still there.
Yeah.
Like you can defy it and be like, oh, it doesn't exist. Well, go jump off a building and see what happens.
Exactly.
Like, you can not believe in it, but it's going to believe in you.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So when you're talking to those people who don't, think it's a thing, you were bringing up some questions like, do you believe in weather and stuff like that? But do you have any do you just go with the go-to theories and like questions, or do you have any like physical things you're like, all right, look at this?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I always go to is the sun and the moon. The king and the queen. They always are like, I'm always having those two in my mind and in my spirit too. And so to talk about the sun is just like, how does the sun influence you? It's just like, do you feel happier on a day that's sunny? And you get vitamin D from the sun, and it's like, so astrology is affecting you in that way. It's just that's very simple. And also, like when we eat our food, if you have more sun during the day and you eat your food, your metabolism is known to be better. And so then with the moon is usually the one I go to first, but it's just the tides of the moon. The tides of the ocean rather. At the new moon and the full moon, it's like more high tides, and then in between at the squares, the quarter squares, it's more low tide.
Okay.
And so since we're mostly water, then the moon's going to be influencing us. And there's studies now that show like when they say like lunatic, it's very clear. It's just like somebody. You can see their full emotions and they're being expressed in a way that's like very apparent. And that's what lunacy is. It's just like when the moon is like making you crazy because the water is like moving and it's just like you're expressing it and it's very obvious and apparent. So those are the things that I go to. The moon is mostly the main thing because it's simple.
Yeah.
Full moon, high tide. Squares, low tide. And it's like, and that's what's happening to us all the time, just in our own emotional state. And so the more awareness we have around that, the easier it is for us to, I would say, evolve, but like really become more aware of what's happening in our emotional body and in our life in general.
Something I've been picking up from you this whole time is your wordplay. Like like using lunatic, like I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Like, Luna's meant for the moon, and that's talking about somebody being crazy.
Yeah.
I never even thought about it. And then you were saying the signature, a sign from nature, like that kind of stuff. I love that kind of stuff because, I'm a rapper. So like using wordplay and finding out the meaning of words, it's like blows my mind.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you feel like, I guess those types of things are like a lost art? Do you feel like as we grow into technological beings instead of these, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have computers, we were just walking around, we were nomads, just like looking for a buffalo to kill and stuff like that. Do you feel like looking up at the stars and thinking about these types of things is becoming a lost art, or do you feel like as technology advances, we're starting to, I guess, understand more? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I like to think the more we go forward, the more we're going backwards. So, and then also there's like a large amount of people who, yes, it's a lost art overall in general, but even back in the day, it wasn't. I don't think that it was like everybody was doing astrology. I think there was like this like priest class that was doing astrology, and people were like coming to them to understand what was going on. So I think that the same thing is happening now in a sense, but it's just many more people, and it's much more covered up, and many more people don't believe in it. Because back in the day, everybody believed in it.
Yeah.
The thing, and obviously not everybody, but it's like they believed in it so much that people would call you a devil worshiper if you did it.
Yeah.
And which is like very clear that they're not thinking that it's not there.
Yeah.
Right? They know something's happening there. Whereas now it's like people are like, I don't believe that. Give me the science.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like, it's always going to be here. And there's going to be people who are like the keepers of it during the times where there's like, I guess you could call it like a low tide, or when it's like being in the shadows until it comes back. You know, astrology and alchemy have always done that. Mm-hmm. They've always hit these high points and then low points and then high points and low points. And right now we're at a high point. Mm-hmm. Even at a high point to the degree that we found like old texts like within the last 20 years to bring back like the whole, maybe not the whole, but a lot of the, what they call like the Western astrological tradition. So like things that came from Persia and things that came from Egypt and the Hellenistic period and stuff like that. They started translating all the old texts. Whereas before, in the last maybe like 100 years, astrology has been like a psychological thing. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like astrology, psychology, and like it's telling you about yourself. Whereas like the ancient astrology much more was, it could do that, but it would tell like, no, like when you're 27, blah, blah, blah is going to happen. Like more predictive and more like what one of my teachers calls like concrete astrology, where you can just like know what's happening in the actual reality rather than just like psychology.
Yeah.
So tangent again, but yeah, that's what it is.
Do you, I was just thinking about this, just looking at you, but like, so you're wearing blue. Like, do you, are you huge into like colors with, I know you're talking about the light, because color energy and light energy are two different things. I don't know if people realize that, but like, do you feel like, you prepare yourself to wear like certain colors around certain people to like feel a certain way? Like, so maybe you might wear blue to be like, okay, I know Jackson, I met him before, but I want him to feel calm around me, so I'm gonna wear blue. Like, do you ever do those kinds of things?
Yeah, I wore blue today because it represents like my throat area, the throat chakra, and then it also represents like healing, calm, peaceful energy. And I forgot to turn my like red light off last night in my room where I was sleeping. So I'm also like wearing blue to essentially like harmonize myself,
balance it out or something.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why I wore blue today, and I don't do it all the time, but I do it a lot. You know, and so which also kind of sucked when I started doing it a lot, because then I started having to like wear less black because black is always like absorbing everything all the time, so all black is my thing. I love wearing all black, but it's just not appropriate to do so for me with the intelligence and knowledge that I have now. Yeah,
and I think a lot of people will associate black with like a dark, like you feel like you're in a somber mood. So sometimes like if I know that I should be giving off energy, I usually won't wear black, because I feel like people will see that as like a dark mood, like I'm not happy or something like that. But so I'll wear like something white. Like I have I've got 2 shirts that say Damaged Media Group on them. They're both white, because I want, number one, to stand out if I'm in like a crowd of people, and 2, I want it to be like I'm giving off light. I'm giving off like a happy presence, instead of black where it's like dark and like more contract. Yeah,
exactly.
And that's something that, you know, I think about, because that's when you're in a business like me and you want people to be attracted to you, you want to give off a happy image to people. So that's something that I think more people should realize when they do things. And they say like, if you're speaking with people and like trying to connect with people, don't wear red, because it's like a power symbol. So you the people might feel like you're looking down upon them because you're wearing like this bright red, you're like, your power. So they call that the power suit for the president, because they wear like a red tie. So perfect for the president because it's the president, right?
Yeah,
but
exactly.
For other people, they say, you know, try not to stay away from that. So.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, and I mean, I contextualize black as those things that you said, but I also think of it as like a void space, or like kind of like, it could be absence, void, and then also absorbing. And so like if I'm absorbing everything, then oftentimes over time it can make me sad, rather than like black actually being the sadness. I kind of sometimes think of it as like more like emptiness. And so whatever there's a void, there's a vacuum. And so
Okay.
you're pulling in a bunch of stuff. Yeah. So it's both and, but I just want to elaborate on that so people can like know like, oh, like I do need to use it in this case. Like if I'm going, like when I'm with my family or when I'm going to like hang out with people like I want to be with and I want their energy around me, I often wear more black.
Okay.
Because I'm just like pulling it in.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and absorbing that. And so that feels good. And so, yeah. And that just brings me to another thought that I always have and I always want to talk about is like, sometimes, and not saying that you were saying this at all, but it's like sometimes people think of things as like good or bad or what's better than or worse than. And I always am telling people like, hey, just be mindful of like, what does this thing do? You know, and like, how is this actually useful? How do I use this? How do I be in relationship and connection with this thing?
Yeah.
Rather than, Cameron, what's the best plant for blah, blah, blah. You know, that's the one I always hear. Like, what's the best plant in this room? Because when I'm in the herb shop, they're like, what's the best plant? And I'm like, well, what are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, look at your body type. You know, I was going to say this one plant, but it's the summertime now. And so now you might need this instead. And so it's just always like being able to observe variables, you know, not to spin out and get lost in the world of thought, but to actually figure out how to like think, you know, how to think so you can ground yourself even more instead of not knowing and then your thoughts are just everywhere.
Yeah. To me, the best way to find out if you're asking the wrong question is if somebody can answer your question with another question with like, for what?
Yeah.
So if somebody's asking you that, you'd be like, for what? You know,
Yeah.
a lot of people ask me, what's the best workout I can do? For what?
Yeah.
Like,
No, I
what are you
that.
trying to accomplish?
Exactly.
And then I can answer your question.
Exactly.
I can't answer, you know, something that I have to answer with another question just to figure out, you know, what you're truly trying to, the solution that you're truly trying to capture. But it's again, that goes back to just the self-awareness. Like, I think we as people have become really bad at figuring out, I guess, like our end result, like our end solution to our problems. A lot of times we get very surface level. So there was this time at work, this guy asked me a question and I was like, be more specific. And then he asked me another question and I was like, be more specific. Because like I really knew what he was trying to ask me, but I wanted him to figure it out because I didn't want to just like skip through and be like, all right, I know what you're trying to ask. I wanted him to actually help figure it out. And that, again, that goes back to what I was talking about with schools. Like schools, they just kind of give you what they think should be the end result and what they think you should be thinking. But really it's like, teach me how to think. Because when people know how to think, again, that goes back to the story I'm saying about him asking me that question. He would have already filtered his own self.
Exactly.
He would already went through that process of, that's not the actual question I want to ask. This is the actual question I want to ask. And so I was in the Air Force. And this one time, me and we're called airman leaders when we're in basic training. There was me and 3 other guys. And so we're going to our team chief's office. And we all had this question that we wanted to ask him. But they were like, Jackson, you ask him. I was like, crap. I was like, all right. So we go in there. And I was like, Staff Sergeant, we were wondering. He was like, don't wonder, just ask. And I was like, oh, my God. And from then on out, I kid you not, I never say I was just wondering.
Yeah.
But I just ask.
Yeah.
Because you're skipping that part of, are you wondering about this thing, or are you just going to ask this person a question?
Exactly.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah.
Do you think about those types of things, like you know, how people are, I guess, just not being their true self? You know, they're. I think the wondering part is about you maybe being afraid to ask your true question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so to me, that's just, that even takes me like all the way back to like childhood development and like attachment to things and how like we feel like, we'll lose our attachment to things if we do something wrong. So we like come at things from a very like fearful place. And because, you know, if you're not too attached to something, you'll just be authentic. If you're being authentic, then you're just going to be like, yo, I was thinking this, what you think?
Yeah.
You know, but if you're attached, and then you're like, if I say this, are they gonna respond? Are they gonna think I'm stupid, or are they gonna respond bad, or are they gonna dismiss me? Am I gonna be rejected? Am I gonna be left feeling hurt like I was when I was younger? Like I'm always trying to, always, like I was saying before, like what's behind that, So I'm like always trying to go to origin points. So at the end of the day, it's just about attachment on that one for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's like music, right? If you make a song and you're ready to put it out, you're like, all right, how are people going to receive this? Like, people are going to like it. And then if you show somebody your song, you can tell how like nervous somebody is about a song when they play it and they're like, well, I mean, it's not really finished,
Exactly. Yeah.
They're seeking that affirmation from people, but some people are really confident and they think everything they make is amazing.
Hot shit, yeah.
And then some people are really great at stuff, but they just don't have any confidence. Like I've met many singers in this area, artists in this area that are very, I'm not gonna say shy, but they're very, they just don't have the confidence in what they're doing. They make great stuff, but they don't think it's great because they're usually, maybe they might just be comparing it to the people who are the best at the top of the charts.
Yeah, sure.
And so they feel like, well, if I'm not as great as that person, then I'm nothing.
Right.
But there's an in between.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like there's that gap of the best and the worst. And I'm always the type of person where I'm always striving to be the best at what I do, but I understand that there is an in between, and you can still be really good at something and not be the best, and people can still appreciate you. I feel like sometimes people feel like, well, if you're not the best, nobody cares. But that's not true.
Yeah,
like,
it's absolutely not true.
Everybody falls off every once in a while. Like, every song Michael Jackson put out wasn't number one. Dang near close. Yeah. But you have to know that there were times where he probably felt like, he might have been depressed. He might have been sad. And because, whatever song didn't do as well as he thought it was going to. But at the end of the day, like, still did Thriller, still did Billie Jean. You know what I mean? Like he still had these hits, and
classics.
You have to realize, you have to be honest with yourself and come back to that. Okay, this is what I wanted to put out. This is how I feel about it. If people receive it, they receive it and like it. If they don't, they don't. But This is how I wanted to express myself to the world.
Yeah.
And when you have that realization, that honesty with yourself, then that's gonna change your mood about everything. Like when you were talking about your experience, like when you came out that cacao experience, like you probably were just happy that you had made yourself vulnerable to do something like that. Because if you had came away from that and just be like, nah, I'm good, like you didn't even try it, then you would have felt differently than you actually attempting it.
Exactly.
I mean, that's how I feel.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and something else too I'm always really keen on is like always thinking about the perspective of perfecting rather than perfection. Because perfection is like this projection of what it's supposed to be and how other people might not think it's this way or that way. And for me, I'm like, well, I'm perfecting it. So even if I put something out, like I'm gonna refine it still, like, I mean, I guess with music that might be a little different for a lot of people, but that's just the way I look at it. It's like if you focus on perfecting things, then you're going to be more present. If you focus on perfection, you're thinking about an idea of like what something should or supposed to be, and it's actually just like you just made that shit up.
Yeah.
But it's not made up if you're perfecting a craft. You're working on it, So that orientation has always been really helpful for me, and for all you Virgos out there, that's what you need to like attune to as well, like perfecting things rather than perfection. Yeah. Because also if you think about perfection, then you're going to think about what's wrong here. You can always identify like something's wrong here, something's messed up, not good enough because it's not perfect. And I'm like, but perfecting, I'm like, oh, I see where that could have. Oh, cool, dope. Oh, I missed that shot. Like I knew when I jumped for the jumper, like I like leaned back too far and like, dang, I missed that jump. Rather than like, oh, we lost.
Yeah.
Just that orientation in of itself is just like a whole. Yeah, it's just a whole different state of being, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, always inviting people into that perspective.
And that's something I never even thought about, that perfection versus perfecting, because like perfection is an endpoint, but perfecting is a process.
Exactly.
Like you were saying, like if you're thinking about perfecting, you're thinking about, oh, how can I change to get better? But perfection is like a team that goes 15-0. Like you don't lose. That's perfection. But perfecting is, okay, we're 13-1 and we got a game or two left. Let's, what can we do to make sure we finish the way that we want to finish? Something like that.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
at the end of the day, like, again, what you were saying with perfection is like as you said, an idea that only you have that idea. Like nobody else can see, like if you're in the studio making a song, nobody else knows what the end result's supposed to be. Only you do because it's your song. But if you're perfecting it, then you can share people like, oh, this is what I want to do. I want this sound to sound like this, and I want this, and we're working on it. But perfection, like if you aren't living up to the expectation that you had for your music.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I did not just, I always love that perspective, the perfecting thing, because to me, it just makes everything fun. Whereas perfection makes everything like a drag, to me at least, I mean, somebody might get off to that, but I mean, for me, like, I don't see people doing the greatest or like thriving in that. So, yeah.
Do you have any kind of methods that you like to go through in your daily life to help you, I guess, refocus? Like if you start getting off track, you start thinking about perfection or something like that, and you're like, all right, let's bring it back. What am I really doing? You got like a drink or like a type of exercise or like whatever.
Yeah, so the first thing I usually do is go out in nature and just like observe how the trees are just sitting there, but they always get what they need. And yeah, just looking at nature, it's like everything's happening and everything is as it needs to be. And so I can bring myself closer to that state of being when I go out in nature. But there's also a few different practices that I do. There's a practice called Alom Velom, which is just alternate nostril breathing to like balance my left and right hemispheres of my brain. That one's pretty good.
Okay.
There's another practice that I did a lot when I was like deeper in the practice of Kundalini yoga called, what they call it the breath of fire, but I call it now by the name Kabbalabhati, which is just like, the skull shining breath. So it's a breath that helps like cleanse and purify your mind. And it's in its best stage, it does that. But before that, it like clears out what's going on in your stomach. So, and I also just like eat less because it's like if I'm digesting and processing too many things in my stomach, I feel like sometimes that like clouds my mind. And so I just need more space.
Yeah.
And so for more space, I have less information. And so I bring in less food.
Yeah.
Go cuddle, that shit is always like very grounding, just like sensual touch. I also do something called Abhyanga, which is just a self oil massage where you like have these medicated oils and I massage myself and then I let it sit for 7 to 45 minutes and I take a hot shower so it can like drive into my system and make it feel like I have like a warm blanket, but like internally, but also like gets rid of toxins on the top level surface of your skin and also feeds the bacteria on your skin as well. And so that's helpful. And then I do a lot of stuff, okay?
Yeah.
And then
I'm stealing all your secrets.
yeah. And then I take this stuff called Nasya. It's just nose oil. And you just take that and it just like lubricates your brain and it makes it feels like, to me it just always feels like I'm like petting my brain but it also like helps you like cleanse out your brain cuz as we get older, a lot of times people's brain just gets dry. They get dried out. Oh, that's why old people are walking around like this and shit, and they're all crusty and shit. Like because they don't lubricate themselves. And so, like, I do that with the nose oil for my brain, and then sometimes I'll do it in my ear, and then I also have eye drops, and I also have a biomat at home that has like 24 pounds of amethyst in it, and like tourmaline and jade. It's a crystal.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so when it heats up, it gives off this this far infrared heat energy, and it's just like healing. And it also, when people are like call earthing, have you heard of that? Okay, so when people they call it earthing, it's pretty much just when you take your shoes off and you walk outside on the ground, and so the ground, like the earth, is like giving you these specific negative ions to like pretty much clear you out of all the positive ions you have.
Yeah.
And so it's just doing that, but on my biomat, and sometimes most of the time I sleep on it on the ground, and so like it's like very healing. Also, go to my altar a lot and just pray and just like be with my ancestors, my guiding spirits, and stuff like that. Most times too, I've gotten out of this habit because I'm with Nadia so much, but every night I would just like have tea, just sit and have tea and just do that for like 30 minutes to an hour, like literally nothing but like silence and just like the bowl, the smell of it, the warmth in my hand, and just like sipping it, and that always brings me straight to center, So all those things, a combination of all those things, that's what I'll say I do for the most part. Yeah, I do yoga like 4 or 5 days a week, like the actual like physical posture practices.
Yeah.
That gets a lot of shit out too, for sure. Like my teacher's a taskmaster, so it works really well for me too.
Do you ever have a too much of a good thing can be a bad thing? Like you ever doing one of these things too much? Do you ever feel like that, or?
Yeah, it's always a dynamic play.
Okay.
For me, I don't ever feel like I don't really feel that anymore.
Okay.
But don't feel that anymore because I did it so much before. Like I was saying, like a trial and error process of just being like, hey, you might not want to do that because I did that. Like, and that was a bit much, like.
Yeah.
The main thing I can think about is even like when I started like learning about like herbs for like libido and shit like that. Like I would like, I'm like, oh, cool. Like I can just like get more muscular and have high libido. Like start taking that, and then it's just like, why did I just want to like yell at that person? Like I'm tripping.
Yeah.
Let me go like drink some water or like take a cold shower. Like I'm tripping. So just like little things like that have always like taught me where the like play, balance, and dynamic tension between all the different practices are at. But I'm always just mindful of like, because if I drink a lot of green tea, that's like a drying thing, And so I'm always like making sure I have all the oils to go with the dryness of the tea, and just balancing all those things out. Or if I'm like working a lot, then maybe I'm gonna take colder, cooler showers. But if it's cold outside, maybe I'm gonna take hotter showers, and always just feeling the balance of hot, cold, wet, dry, relaxed, tense, and seeing that in my life and how I'm expressing myself, so that I can like stay in like divine harmony.
Are you consistently looking for new things, or are you just trying to hone in on this, like the information that you already know?
Yeah, I'm actually removing a lot of ways that I've like expressed myself. And what I mean by that is like there's like different traditions that I would like speak about, and so I'm just starting to remove like traditional Chinese medicine. I'm not talking about that as much, so that I can go deeper into Ayurveda.
Okay.
Or like I'm not trying to synthesize everything and be so eclectic, because I'm like trying to go deeper into certain paths. Like it's like as if I've done like a lot of surface things that have led me to a lot of depth, but if I can remove those things and I can go deeper into like specific traditions. So yeah, I'm removing things and dialing in on certain things to just be deeper in traditions.
Does it seem like you have to I guess just analyze like the things that are your favorites? So like being on your amethyst mat, like you feel like, all right, this is my thing, I'm not changing this. Or do you feel like sometimes you need to swap it up? Like, all right, let me go 3 months without using it, and then I'm gonna hop back in it so I can appreciate it more.
Yeah,
like
I do that with herbs more than anything
Okay.
else. Yeah, because there's just seasons that I'm in, or specific planetary transits that are happening. Like right now, Saturn is in a certain place, so I'm gonna like I've been working with herbs for my joints, tendons, and ligaments more in my body as Saturn goes over top of a bunch of stuff in my astrological chart, because it has a tendency towards like restricting energy. So I choose to be more disciplined and just like work with herbs for my joints. Whereas, like in like October, Mars will be in a certain place, and it'll like have to do with relationships. And so then I already am starting to like formulate like herbs for me and Nadia to take, during that time, or for me specifically, but invite her into that.
Yeah.
So that it's like more chill, more like relaxed intimacy, connection that feels like healthy and good. So I'm always changing based off of the changes that I see. Every season is going to be different. Every planetary season is going to be different. And so, yeah, it's always in dynamic motion for me at this point in time. Yeah.
I think a lot of people's careers and their like the habits that they do, they could be exhausting, but I feel like everything that you're involved in is going to be more actually exhausting because it's more mental and more emotional. Do you feel like it could be exhausting just keeping up with these kind of things, like keeping up where planetary alignments are, or keeping up with nature and how things are going? Do you feel like it's well? No, it's just natural, Jackson. Like
Yeah.
you look up articles on music. I look up stuff about the astrology. Like, is it just that simple, or do you feel like it's taxing on the body and the mind?
Yeah, so I think it's simple for me, but that's because I always start with everything basic and everything, yeah, simple. And so things that I do or I think or I see have a tendency towards seeming complex, but a lot of times we forget all complexity is many basic things
Yeah, yeah.
organized and added up. And so if one has the patience and understanding to take time to understand the basics, then the thing that seems complex is actually simple. And so that's how I feel about it. Yeah, it's just simple. And it also, everything that I'm doing, I feel like it restores me and it harmonizes me for the most part. So I'm always, yeah, and I'm dedicated to that because I am dedicated to psychologically and emotionally and physically holding space for other people. So it's not even just for me. So it makes it easier in that way as well. I'm doing it for me and the person I'm going to talk to later today. So it's simple and easy, and I also feel more vibrant than most people 95% of the time. So it always just like gives me more confirmation and confidence to keep going in that direction. I think I played football in college, and I feel better in my body now, and I feel stronger in my body, even though I can't lift as much weight. Like my body actually is like stronger in like an actual usage sense instead of being like bulky, heavy.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, yeah, everything I do is like leaning towards like more nourishment for myself, for my partner, for my family. And so I just continue on doing that.
Yeah, and like what you were saying about the strength thing, that reminds me of like seeing like people who are power lifters, like lifting heavy weight, and then you'll see like the really small guys who just do body weight, like gymnasts.
Yeah.
They're able to control their body in ways that a guy who could deadlift 800 pounds, he can't do those same things that a guy who's a gymnast can do. It's because, number one, they just train their bodies differently,
Exactly.
different muscles. But at the same time, I feel like, as you were saying, like emotionally, just being in touch and mentally being in touch with your body and being like, you're learning your body, right? You're trying to understand, like, okay, these I guess senses affect the way that my body feels, the way it moves. So I know what to do, what not to do. But if you're just going in the gym, just lifting weights and not really thinking about that kind of stuff, like, yeah, you're going to build muscle, but you might not be in tune with your body the way you should be
Exactly.
to build that physical or mental strength that connects with you.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's something that anybody could do, or
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
You think so?
Especially if they reach out. But yeah, so because I mean, even like all the things that I said might even sound kind of complicated or like a lot. And for me, it's just like back to the sun and the moon. The moon is like cool and moist and it's relaxed and it's like flowing. And the sun is like bright and strong and it's warming. It could be hot and it could be kind of dry you out a little bit. And so I'm just like, what's my sun moon balance? Period. And so like, am I like radiant and strong and big, or like versus like being able to like move into my body with that? And yeah, I just keep that. Those are the main two. If anything seems complicated, I just go back to that sun moon. And I just go back to that. And I'm like, I feel more dry, and maybe I need to put more oils on, or I need to relax more, or I was lifting weights and now my joints feel a little creaky. Let me go stretch. This is it could be very, very, very simple in that way.
Yeah.
But sometimes I do take people into like the simplicity, reach them all the way towards the complexity, and then be like, stop, just come back and just like, is it hot? Is it cold? Is it wet or is it dry? And just take 3 months to figure out what that it means to you in your life, or take a whole year so you can look at the season, so you can hear it in people's voices when they talk. Everybody knows a dry motherfucker. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
everybody
yeah.
knows the emotional, wet, spongy, swampy, blah, 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 or
Yeah.
just like caring, loving, nurturing, watery. And it's like, well, how can you see that in anything? Everything. And like, how is that relating to your life? How are you, like, if I don't have a lot of it inside of myself, do I have it in my external environment? And just like bringing things in that can give me the harmony and balance, So it could be really simple, but you would actually have to like decondition a lot of stuff and then
Yeah.
learn other things first. But I think that's simple too if somebody has patience. They just got to have the patience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that I always think about that I feel like I can share with very few people because they don't understand, but I feel like I can share this with you. When I'm in a room with people, it's like my brain has this meter of how much energy is in the room. And I would say, let's just say it's 0 to 100 at all times. And it's like I can see people's energy like above their heads.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, this all needs to like equal out. So I feel like it's actually easier to do with the more people that are in the room. So let me give like a better example. If I'm just like one-on-one with somebody, I have to like figure out the person and then like figure out, okay, are they really happy and like projecting, like you were saying with the sun, projecting energy, or are they like really calm? And then I have to level out my energy based off of their energy the whole time.
Yeah.
But if I'm just in a room full of people, everybody's different. So it's just constantly like, changing, but I can't figure out everybody's energy all at once.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's easier because I'm just more relaxed. I can just be whatever I want to be.
Yeah.
Do you ever think like that, or am I just crazy?
No, I mean, I feel kind of the opposite. Like when I'm one-on-one with somebody, it's just like, it's just like straight into like their like center energetically. But when there's more people, yeah, I just kind of actually, it's not that I retract, but I just come back to center and I don't even even worry about it, to be honest. Because I am I help guide people. And so usually I like to do that like on a one-on-one basis. It's easier because, yeah, even like all these ideas I can have and blah, blah, and it's like, but now we're talking about this one person in 2022, lives in Memphis, it's just like it makes it very easy for me to like channel in and like see what's going on there and make things more clear. Whereas there's a lot of people, it's like, well, does anything actually even need to be clear here? I don't need to necessarily guide this whole room.
Yeah.
So I need to like actually like probably reserve my energy so that I can continue to do what I'm doing, because there's a lot of people with trauma on the planet, and a lot of those people come to me. And so I'm like, I take a lot of responsibility for that. Not even in like a weight on my shoulders responsibility, but more like my ability to respond and adapt to every situation and circumstance, because I know I'm caring for so many people. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about that. Like, do you ever feel like the weight of other people's emotions, do you ever feel like that's just on top of you? Because if you're a very emotionally intelligent person, if somebody isn't, they're not going to be even thinking about that kind of stuff.
Right.
Like, somebody who doesn't care about the climate, we could be, we're seeing climate change, but if you're not aware of that, it doesn't affect you. Mentally it doesn't. It obviously is affecting.
Exactly.
But is that how you feel? Like, because you're aware of these things, then they affect you in your life?
Yeah, I just think that I like to become accountable for them, and like not even accountable as my responsibility. I must change the climate change.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, like I know this person, this person, this person. I have these resources right now. I have this type of car right now. And so now I'm accounting for all these things that I'm doing so that I can help more, you know? And so to me, like also to be unconscious means that like people can't have responsibility when they're unconscious. And so I want to be responsible for the people that I love and the planet in and of itself. So I have to become more aware. That's where I come from with it. It's not even, well, at this point, it's not even about like some spiritual thing. It's just literally about, being caring. This could be that simple.
Yeah.
Because people who are unconscious, I don't hold them accountable.
Yeah.
Because that's like holding a baby accountable. That's like being mad at a baby for not walking properly.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't even know any better.
Yeah.
And so that's how I treat all humans, because every human is a baby that's grown up and didn't learn certain shit.
Yeah. And I think that's what's wrong with social media nowadays. Like, we get mad at people for not thinking the way we think. It's like, hold on, do you even know what they know? Like, are you aware that they don't have the same knowledge or the same wisdom that you have?
Yeah.
So why why are you attacking them like that?
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. And it does help me with like not judging things too, So it's a great point. Yeah.
It's great to be around more diverse people because of that.
Absolutely.
Like, if you're around so many people that you all think the same, you're all going to be on that same accordance, and you don't have any level of change to be able to diagnose each other with, like, oh, you're feeling like this today. Well, you probably all think the same.
Exactly.
It's like they say, like, females, when they're around each other all the time, like, their periods like sync up. If you are the type of person who, you all think the same, then your brains are all going to have the same thoughts.
Exactly.
There's no change. So being around more diverse people, you get these different ideas, you start having different thoughts, and it creates a different atmosphere for people.
Yeah, yeah. But a lot of people, they like the echo chamber, that like represents safety for them.
Yeah.
And so I acknowledge that as well. And also with that comes like a lack of awareness of certain things. So I'm always just like, yeah, that's where you're at. That's fine. As long as you don't bring that shit to me, Like, yeah, that's how I always kind of keep it.
Yeah.
And also, like, I think sometimes I actually like try to be like as least judgmental as possible, so that when I actually do, I can like come with full force on some level. Like, I'm like, let me save my energy for the times I actually need to like let it like release. So
Yeah. Do you feel like you have to like make people aware that you don't want their type of energy around you? Like, I think it's very difficult for people, like, telling one of your loved ones, like, hey, I don't like being around you because you're negative. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So do you feel like you have to, or is it easy for you to let people know, like, hey, this is what kind of state I'm in. Don't come around me with all that. So, like, does it seem like some difficulty doing that or no?
Yeah, I mean, there was, but at this point now, I just kind of give options. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily directly options to other people, but it's just like, if you're going to be this way, I can stay here if I'm allowed to be this way. Mm-hmm. And so most of the time, that's not comfortable for the other person.
Yeah, yeah.
And not everybody, but most people want to feel this type of comfort all the time. And they want other people to hold up their ego or their identity. And I'm not really one to do that all the way. Most times I'm working on easing into that more, especially, and this is mostly in like intimate connections, like close relationships. So they either have that option or I can just go somewhere else while they're like that. And we can talk later. It's all good. It's just like, if you're going to be this way, I need to be this way to feel okay about it. And if not, then we can talk every 3 months, every 2 months, or we can talk about these particular areas of subject matters that feels comfortable for both of us.
Yeah.
And in that way, we can stay in connection and everything will be good.
Yeah, yeah.
You do that other whack ass shit with somebody else.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to fuck with that bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of how I go about it, which a lot of people have walked away because of that, but most of the time they at least come back around, or they like share their level of appreciation for like the authenticity, and that's something that I'm really strong on. It's just like, I'm going to choose authenticity over attachment. Because I know I'm not a baby. I might be scared as shit about it too.
Yeah.
Like, I might be like, oh my God, if I do this, this might happen, blah, blah, blah. Bet. I'm going to do it.
Just attack
so
it.
So I can be authentic, or at least more and more authentic about how I'm living my life. And I also want the other person to be authentic and know that they can do it too. So again, I'm doing it for myself, and I'm always doing it for other people. Because if I don't do it, then I can't help my sister with it. I can't help my brother with it. I can't help my mom, my dad with it. So I have to do it.
Yeah. Something that I'm huge on is making people feel comfortable, because I know that if you feel comfortable, you're going to be more authentic. And like when you have to retract into yourself and you're scared, or you're not sure what's going on, then you start changing a little bit of who you are. You don't have full thoughts. So that's one of my huge things. And I tell people all the time, I think I told you and Nadia when y'all came in, like I'm horrible with introducing myself. Like I just always feel like I have an objective with that person. Like when Nadia came in, we were talking about the video stuff. I probably didn't even introduce myself to you, but it's just me. Like I'm like, all right, I have this thing I want to do, and I'm just ready to do it. Whoever's around can be around. They can watch. I don't care. But like I've got an objective.
It's all good, but I'm doing my thing.
Yeah. And I don't know. I just always, like with being comfortable, it's all about like just making people realize it's normal. You know what I mean? Like I don't want people, when they come here, I don't want them to feel like it's like they have to be a certain way.
Yeah.
They have to act a certain way.
Yeah.
That might be why I don't do like full introductions, because I don't want to feel like I'm putting on a show. It's like, oh, just same old me. Like you already know me. We already been hanging out, stuff like that. So I don't know.
Yeah. And honestly too, like I kind of I resonate with that a lot, because when someone's acting a certain way, I feel like I'm gonna act a certain way, and so then like I'm like, it's okay for you to act that way, even if I don't like it. It's okay, but it like doesn't always create comfort. But I'm like, you're welcome to be comfortable in any expression that you have of yourself.
Yeah.
As long as you know I'm gonna come with the same thing.
Yeah.
And so that can feel good for me, especially. But like people who are ready to confront stuff like that, it actually like creates tension that like builds muscle in a sense, and so it actually creates more intimacy and connection and comfort later on, especially like I'm saying, like in more intimate relationships.
Yeah, I think it's the funnest thing when you're talking with somebody and you think they're a certain way, and then you find out they're not, and then that tension just kind of relaxes. You're like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is the kind of stuff we're doing. I mean, even like there's like restaurants like Logan's and maybe Texas Roadhouse is like this as well, where you can like eat peanuts and just like throw it on the floor.
Yeah.
That's traditionally you're not going to just throw stuff on the floor at a restaurant, but like I think that was their tactic of, let's make people feel like something comfortable, something out of the normal, that they can feel like they're at home, which I hope you're not throwing stuff on. But
well, I mean, at a Roadhouse you might be. Come on in, y'all.
Yeah. It's that homey feeling of, I feel comfortable because I don't have to feel stuck up or feel like hurting somebody's feelings by the stuff that I do. Those types of things will completely change somebody's mood, their mindset. That's why, like downstairs, we want to like have like a little break area where people can, get a snack or have coffee, water, stuff like that. Because like when you're making music, you have to get in like a certain state, a certain mindset, and you want to be relaxed. Like a lot of people come in here for the first time, and if they don't feel relaxed, they probably aren't going to put out the best product. Yeah, everything's going to be off their whole emotional state. So being comfortable is always like number one. It's Deion Sanders. He said, "You look good, you feel good, you play good." It's because the way you look, that's going to change your mood, and then your mood is going to affect the way that you play. So that's something to live by for everybody, no matter what you do.
Yeah, exactly. I'm running to the bathroom real quick.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. We're gonna take a little break. All right, we're back. So yeah, I mean we've covered a lot. Is there something that you feel like about astrology specifically that you would love for people to understand and know?
Yeah. One thing specifically earlier when we were talking, I heard the train go by.
Yeah,
and so I had wrote down before I came here. It was like between like 9 a.m. and 9:30 the train could like disrupt, because I saw like a specific like astrological placement happening, and it was like 8:57
Oh, wow.
when it came. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I do that sometimes too. Like if I'm in a store or something like that, and like somebody drops something, or if we're in a restaurant and like the table like, or somebody drops like a glass or something, I always look and I'm like, damn, like I can't even make this shit up, It's just like, yeah, so I just wanted to say that. And then also something I was thinking about earlier with the like Doctrine of Signatures too, with the zodiac signs, just going through a few of them, like thinking about how astrology corresponds to everything in the reality, and how Aries could be seen as like the sperm, and like Taurus would be like the ovum. And when they come together at Gemini, it makes like a diploid zygote. And then those two things start to fuse together to make the baby at Cancer. And so just like, yeah, just inviting people to realize how applicable it is in like so many different situations. Like, so it could be like that. It could be self-help. It could be, I even work with people on like learning how to be their best self in the present moment, just through like teaching them through the zodiac signs, and also how it can like help with health and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I wanted. I just wanted to say that real quick before we left. And there's so many other things that we could talk about. But I do want to say, like, okay, so the types of astrology that I practice, just so people know, is like natal astrology, which is just like helping somebody with their like psychology or like their life. You could call it, and then there's predictive astrology, where it's like helping people get business plans or like plan their years out and stuff like that. And then there's something called electional astrology, just help picking times to do things.
Okay.
And then there's medical astrology to work with like people's health overall. And also I'm an herbalist, so just giving people an invitation to like reach out.
You said you do all those?
Yeah, I practice all those, and I'm still learning more. Like in a few years here, I'll be learning like what's called locational astrology or astrocartography. So like helping people being able to like where they should move on the planet through astrology and stuff like that. So yeah, it's pretty expansive, and I also just want people to know that, because people have such a limited framework of what they think astrology is. And it could be so much more than that. Yeah.
I think that for sure. Like we see too much of people who think they know everything and they try to teach it. And then it's like you're giving astrology probably like a bad rap or whatever, because you're giving people a very condensed look at it. And it might be just your look at it. And you're projecting your opinion as a truth. Exactly. And really it's just your outlook on how things are. What are some of the ways that people can, I guess, dive into astrology? Other than looking at, please, everybody, go to Cameron. But other than that, totally. What are some other ways that people can?
So there's somebody named Stormy Grace, and she made we crowdfunded basically and got like enough, we raised enough money to like do like a YouTube Academy. So you can go to Stormy Grace's YouTube Academy that has like a bunch of amazing astrologers. There's so many different topics there. There's also something called EA Zoom meetings. That's a specific type of astrology, evolutionary astrology. So many videos on that. Evolutionary astrology, I love it so much. Yeah, the EA Zoom meetings is great. So those are the two ones that I would say. There's also something called the Astrology Podcast that has amazing content as well. So those three are all places that I give them clout, you know? And so that's where I would start with. I also have a course out with the company Astrology Hub, and I got some stuff coming out this year with this company Kepler College as well. And also people can get lessons. I do individualized lessons, so it would be like geared towards what they want to learn specifically. So yeah, that's what I would say.
So with astrology, is it good for somebody to know like all things, or is it like you should focus on this thing? As a teacher, you're learning everything, but like if I'm like a Cancer, which I am, but should you just be focusing on that stuff, or should you learn everything?
I think it all depends on the person and what their passion is or their desire for astrology is. It's like we always need context for the content. If somebody's like, I just want to know this and like be better at relationships, and it's like, well, you don't need to know astrological weather or astrological magic. Well, maybe you might want to know astrological magic, but you don't necessarily need those things, you know.
Yeah.
So it'll just be like learning the natal astrology and like what's called synastry, how two people's charts combine, like not how they combine, but how they are in relationship with each other. And then also what's called composite charts, where you basically fuse both of the charts together and it becomes one entity. And so, yeah, it would just depend on the context for what somebody's desiring moving forward.
Okay. Also, one last thing. What are you drinking?
What I'm drinking, this is called Spring Dragon Tea. And then I got some drops from this person I was learning pulse from out in India called Superhuman Liquid. And so, yeah, I just been drinking that. And I had a bunch of other stuff this morning too, but I wasn't going to bring it. It was like wine and some oil of gold and some other stuff. Yeah.
Are these everyday things or certain occasions?
The oil of gold has become more and more everyday thing because, yeah, like I was saying too, like how I change things up. You know, like this year I'm in a year that highlights the sun. You know, it's like ruled by the sun. So everything about the sun this year is going to be more highlighted for me. So the oil of gold gold represents the sun, and so Nadia got me the oil of gold. So I've been taking that pretty consistently. But other than that, the things that I do every day would be like the basic stuff. Like I do like oil pulling, tongue scraping, stuff like that. Yeah, that's the basics that I do. Hot water. Hot water every day. All the time. Like it just helps you metabolize things so well. Like, and you know, people say lemon, ginger, yeah, that too, cool,
Yeah.
awesome. But like hot water, especially during the wintertime, so good.
Yeah.
So good.
I'll have to hook you up with my wife. She loves all teas and stuff like that. She's constantly drinking different kinds of teas and coffee. She loves coffee. So, yeah, I have to get her in tune with everything you're doing. But, all right, let's wrap this up. Give everybody, like, your info, how they can reach you, and learn more about everything that you do.
Yeah, so everybody can reach me on Instagram at CADream6. On Twitter, I'm at CADream7. And my website is www.cadreamplanet.com. www.cadreamplanet.com. And also, you can find me on YouTube. Just type in Cameron Allen Astrology. I write monthly articles for Yoga Journal as well. I forgot to say that I've been like writing a lot. So yeah, those are all the ways you can find me. And if you just go and Google and type in Cameron Allen Astrology or yoga, then I should pop up pretty quick there, and you could just like browse and peruse. And yeah, also when I'm in town in the city on Wednesdays from 2 to 7, I work at a store called Ebo. So Ebo Spiritual Supply Store at 1331 Madison Avenue, where I'm just like practicing herbalist there. But I'm gonna be out of town probably until like mid-April, end of April for now. But people watching this in the future, just go to my Instagram, hit me up, and we can connect from there. Especially if you're in Memphis. If you're in Memphis, it's easier to get in contact with me and do a bunch of other things because we even talk about the energy work that I do and yoga practices that I give people. But I do that stuff too. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Cool.
Learn a ton. And I think everybody else who is not up to date on this kind of stuff will definitely appreciate everything you're talking about. And yeah, and hopefully they can see you at Ebo and get to know you some more.
Cool. Appreciate you.
No problem.
Yeah, it's been dope.
All right. Thank you for everybody tuning in, and we'll see you next time.